Hello again, fellow audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, and these are the Fiio FH19 8-driver in-ear monitors. These are a little bit over $600 US. These were sent to me directly from Fiio for review, but Fiio has asked nothing in exchange other than a fair and honest evaluation. I am an affiliate link partner with some retailers who carry these, so see the links in the description down below, where you can buy these and help support the channel. And again, I only use affiliate link money to keep the channel running. So these are a pretty decent set of IEMs. They've got 8 drivers per side, so we will talk about all of that and my listening impressions right on the other side of shameless self-promotion.
Hello. I'm one of the reasons that Wave Theory can't spend all of his money on audio gear. He wants you to know that your support is vital for keeping the channel running. So if you enjoy Wave Theory's bussin' review riz and no-cap review style and want to encourage him to stay in the basement so I don't have to listen to his dad jokes as much, like the video and subscribe to the channel. You can also send him a donation on PayPal or sign up for the Patreon. Links are in the description. Now on to the review.
Alright, overhead view as I normally do with IEMs because it is easier to see them. Alright, the FH19s have a dual dynamic driver in them in a push-pull configuration. So it's like two dynamic drivers for the bass frequencies that are moving like this together. But Fiio counts that as 2 drivers, and then each side also has 6 balanced armatures that handle the mid-range on up through the treble. And so these are 8 drivers per side. The rated impedance is 16 ohms, and the rated sensitivity is 108 decibels per milliwatt, so they are not particularly difficult to drive. So here is the FH19. It has a titanium shell, mostly, here on the, on the shell. And then we have nozzle here, and the cabling is MMCX. I'm not going to remove it because, frankly, they're a pain in the butt to remove, so I'm just going to leave them there. But there's a good look at the shell and the casing and all of that itself. All right, a point on the nozzles here in just a moment. Let's look at the accessories real quick. You get this nice little leather box kind of a thing, and a bunch of accessories in there. We're coming back to the nozzles in just a moment. But in here, you get this little, the cable removing tool. There is an adapter for 3.5 millimeter single-ended on the cable if you want it. You get the wax pick and brush here, and a variety of different tips come with this. Some of them from SpinFit. The ones that I use, I'm pretty sure these are SpinFit CP145s, which are kind of my favorite. Usually work the best for me on most IEMs. Not all, but most. Okay, and so these guys right here are the ones that I used on the FH19 for pretty much all of the evaluation, because they struck the best balance of comfort, sound, and actually staying in my ears with those tips on them, and so forth. Whoops, I shouldn't have put all of that away yet. Well, it's fine. Here we go. All right, let's talk about the nozzles on the IEMs here a little bit, because one of the key features about the FH19 here is that the tip of the nozzle is interchangeable, okay? And you can swap it out with other tips, and these tips are filters that affect the sound. The black ringed filter right here is the balanced, and then on here it says the green, okay, green. Those are the more treble focused filters, and then red are the more bass focused filters. So you get some amount of tuning in the stock packaging by swapping these out. And it's conceptually easy to swap them out. Literally, these just unscrew. Okay, and then you take one off of this little panel here, whichever one you want, and you screw it back on. And that's what it looks like inside there when you take the tip filter off, right? And then it just screws back into place. Now, my only other experience with an IEM that had a threaded and swappable, I think it was the whole nozzle in that case. It was one of the Moondrops. Was it the Kato that had the ones where it's like a brass and an aluminum, I think, nozzle here? And on that Kato, this could come loose, okay? And That scared me when it first happened because I thought I broke the IEM and I panicked a little bit. And then I realized that, oh, it's just threaded and it came loose. What I have noticed here is that the longer that these things stay in place, the tighter they get actually. So if you don't swap these out for a period of time, then unscrewing it can take a lot of effort because they do get pretty tight in there. Right, but yeah, we'll talk more about the sound of these different filters here when we get to the sound section. But I thought that was, I do think that is a pretty interesting and an approach there, just to give different sounds in the stock packaging, in the stock configuration like that. And I mean, it really does change the sound. Again, more on that in a moment. All right. Stock cabling here, which I believe I read, it's either, I think it's a silver-plated copper, if I'm not mistaken, but I will link to the website and you can check that out here. Okay, and it's a pretty nice cable. It doesn't tangle all that much. It's nice and soft and supple. Okay, not a lot of memory to it. And then, as I mentioned earlier, like the, I forget exactly how it works, but this this termination here is swappable. I use 4.4 millimeter. Pentacon balanced most of the time, but you saw in the accessories package just a moment ago that there's a 3.5 millimeter single-ended that you can put on there. So you get both options there in the stock packaging right out of the box too. And again, the cable is pretty nice. So I really didn't have any complaints about that at all. Using it. So, and I didn't feel the need to change to a different cable or anything like that, because again, it works pretty well. Okay. As we transition to talking about the sound, where we'll talk about the different filters here too, let me mention my test gear. All right, a common source for music here would have been my Samsung Galaxy S22 Plus smartphone, which is doing the filming right now. And thank goodness that this is not in 3D, or I would be stabbing you in the eye right now. Okay, but this right here is the Radzone Ear Studio 100. It is no longer available, but it is a little Bluetooth DAC amp that can do LDAC and all of that. So that would connect to said smartphone. And I would use a little, I think it's, how do you pronounce this? Yakamu. Okay. Female Pentacon to male 2.5 millimeter TRRS balanced adapter here so that I could use that 4.4 millimeter balanced connection, okay, on this little device here. This thing, it's the ES100 is a little older now, but it still sounds really good. So I use that as one source, a couple of DAPs. I used the Hibi R4, okay, just did a review of that published, and I am currently working on a review of the Ibeso DX180, okay, so both of these would have been used to drive the FH19 as well. I should come back and say here for a moment that the ES100 primarily would have been used in conjunction with either RuneArc or Spotify, the high quality Spotify, using the LDAC Bluetooth codec, okay, through here, mostly at the gym for workouts and stuff. All right, these two right here would have played either local, lossless, or high-res FLAC or DSD files, either through USB Audio Player Pro and then into here, or in the case of the Ibeso, it's got its own little Mango player on it. I'll talk more about that when we get to its review, or I would use that too, again, playing local, lossless, or high-res FLAC DSD. I also tried both of them using RuneArc and then plugging that into there. The only unfortunate thing is just the way RuneArc works with DAPs is it does not avoid Android resampling, so everything, even though they were lossless files initially, would be resampled to 48 kilohertz PCM. Okay, there, so those two are sources. And then the big gun, if you will, Cord Hugo 2 with matching 2Go streamer and this P&W audio adapter from RCA. Okay, RCA output to 4.4 millimeter Pentacon. This would have been a Rune endpoint, again playing lossless FLAC or lossless DSD or high-res FLAC, either through Rune locally or streamed those FLAC files from Qobuz and again through Rune. Okay. Hashtag reviewer life when you just have this many sources lying around. Okay. The sound. I did end up settling mostly on the balanced filters on here, or the black ones. I thought that one was, well, the most balanced, okay? So that was properly named. The tuning is, especially with the balanced filters, I think is pretty close to Harman, with the one that's got a little bit of a bass shelf on it, because regardless of filter here, the bass extension on these and the sub-bass presence is great. Okay, reaches way down deep, and there's a lot of presence in the deep sub bass. Okay, and so they have a powerful bassy sound regardless of the filter type. Just the bass is powerful, punchy, present, and that sort of thing. And then the bass also has decent pitch definition and articulation, okay texturing, but it's really more about just the fun presence and the bump, okay, in that sub bass that comes with it. All right. Deviating from the balanced filters a little bit, the green ones here, which are the bass, or excuse me, the treble, what I found is that the filters really do not change the level of bass below about 200 hertz or so-ish. They don't change the amount of bass there. What they do to create the perception of sounds is that they either increase the amount of treble presence or decrease the amount of treble presence relative to the black filter tips that are known as the balanced. And so the green is just a little bit brighter overall sound. Right, and I didn't love that. It was a little bit sibilant to me, a little bit sharp, a little bit fatiguing, so I didn't love the green ones. The red ones lose some clarity, a little too much clarity to me. They are definitely a warmer tilt to the sound. They roll off the treble a little bit more, but for whatever reason, they kind of muddy and make the sound a little bit more congested as well. So I honestly did not use the red and green tips very much, other than to figure out what they do to the sound, and then I just stuck with the balanced sound filters, which have a very close to a Harman tuning. So with that knowledge, let me unpack more about the sound then again using the black or the balanced filters. Again, I've already talked about the sub bass and all of that, and then with the black filters, I thought the tonal balance in the mids and in the treble was also pretty good and fairly natural. There is a wide-ish sound stage that has a little bit of depth to it. The imaging and the separation are also decent. It's not superbly three-dimensional or holographic, but it's not poor in that regard either. The resolution is decent from a macro sense and not all that great in a micro sense. So let me unpack that a little bit here. The macro level detail retrieval, in terms of like what are the things in the sound that you really need to hear, they're all there. Okay, and they're presented at a fairly natural level, and you know, they're fairly believable. It's the micro stuff where these leave a little bit on the table, but again, not poor. So things like texturing, being able to tell like where a room reverb comes from, and just really subtle things like that. Some of the trailing ends of tones and the decays and all of that. Those things to me, like where room reverbs are coming from, so aspects of the spatial presentation and like, you know, being able to tell where a room reverb sound is coming from and all of that, those are often lumped into spatial presentation aspects, which are not completely wrong, but to wring that out and to present that stuff well requires very high resolution, particularly like on a micro resolution scale, like the really fine grained stuff. And these are okay, but not spectacular at that. So that was a thing that I noticed in the presentation too. The dynamics on these, I talked about the bass already. The sub bass is present and full and hard hitting and all that, but like one thing that I noticed on this IEM that I haven't noticed on other IEMs in the past, and again, I don't know if that's because it's just where the dynamic drivers like trail off and then the balanced armatures take over or what, but like the sub bass dynamics are really hard hitting and impactful here, but the mid-range and the treble dynamics they fall off a little bit in comparison. So like snare drum hits are not as snappy. Cymbal crashes are not as crashy. The leading edges of the tones and all of that don't have quite just the pop to them that the sub bass part does. And so on a track where you've got both going on. One that I discovered more recently is The Humbling River by Pussifer. Like, that track has some really deep, hard-hitting sub-bass on it, but then it also has like this big drum flurry at the end where the drums are just hit aggressively and they sound huge on some gear, but these, like, they had all of that great sub bass deep impact, but those drum hits just didn't quite have the attack to them that I would have liked to, and it just felt a little out of place next to what they were doing with the sub bass. Is that a problem on most program material? No, it's just a thing that I picked up here. Now, last thing I'll talk about here is that the timbre, though, is pretty good, especially in conjunction with this thing, the iBasso DX180. There was just a really natural and like liquid kind of quality to it, but just a very natural organic timbre, particularly with vocals through these, again, especially in conjunction with the DX180 here. Again, review on this pending, stay tuned. Okay, so they are capable of some really outstanding and natural timbre as well. So quick comparisons then with some things like near-ish the price. I think they're about $550. It's the Moondrop Variations, which I think is about $500, $550, so only about 50 bucks or so, 50 to 100 bucks behind these in price-ish. Okay. And the Variations might have been a little bit more resolving overall than these, but they had a bite to them in the upper mids that did not work for me. So on balance, I would prefer these over the Variations. The other one that I have reviewed recently is the Effect Audio and Elysian Audio collab known as the Pilgrim Noir. And these are really good except for one fatal flaw, is they had a little bit of glare in the upper mids, lower treble as well on some program material. When these are at their best, I prefer them to the FH19. They're a little bit more resolving. They have a little bit more bass presence yet to me, which gives them a little bit more fun, impact, and all of that. And on the right program material, these took me to a better listening experience than these did, but these are not as graceful, and they have that, again, a little something going on in the upper mids, lower treble that's got a bit of a glare, gets a little harsh, a little fatiguing, can pull me out of the moment, and then also like it, you know, just detracts from the overall listening experience. These are more forgiving in that nature. These are rarely ever sibilant or harsh in the upper mids and all that. There is a smoothness to them that I really appreciate, all that. So even though their ceiling may not be as high as the Pilgrim Noir, their floor is higher than the Pilgrim Noir. And I think for IEMs, that can really be an important thing because of use cases and all of that. You know, you get your DAP, right? And you go out on the road, you're on the go. You're probably not carrying around multiple sets of IEMs with you, like many of us who are headphone users have multiple sets of headphones on our shelf or hanging on our wall or however it is we store them. When we can grab different headphones to match the different kinds of music we're listening to match the different gear that we're listening to, etc. But when you're on an on-the-go situation, then you basically, like, this is it. This is all you have, right? And so the ability to play nicely with a wider variety of music and be a little bit more graceful with varying levels of recording quality, I think, are strengths for IEMs. And this, while again, it may not have the highest performance ceiling that I have heard for an IEM at this point, it has one of the highest performance floors, and there's a lot to be said for that. All right, so that is my take then on the Fiio FH19 IEM. I guess 6 driver, you know, the 2 dynamic driver in a you know, dual configuration and the 4 balanced armatures per side and all of that. Pretty decent stuff by Fiio, okay? I can recommend them for general use on the go and so forth there. So if you're looking for an IEM at the price point to do that, check these out. All right, I am Wave Theory. This has been my review of the Fiio FH19 in-ear monitors. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment if you have not already. Check out my PayPal and my Patreon, and generally do those things you do to support YouTube channels. And as always, enjoy the music.